Hey everybody, welcome to How To Hacker. This is the show where we show you the shortcuts for how to do real hacking using state-of-the-art techniques. In this episode, we're going to show you a really powerful, cutting-edge vulnerability in the sudo library that allows you to gain full access over a system. So for just a little bit of background, what is the sudo library, right? So most people who use Linux are familiar with the sudo library at this point. It's probably one of the most commonly used commands. Basically what it allows us to do is run commands on Linux as another user. Usually what we're going to use this to do is run commands as an administrator or as the super user. So we'll use the sudo library often to install packages, to change our passwords, and to access sensitive files that we may not want just any user seeing, right? Well, for such an important library that's so critical to Linux security, you'd think that it's pretty secure, but apparently it's not. CVE 2023-22809, which was just released a couple of weeks ago, shows that in sudo versions between 1.8 and 1.9, there's a very serious vulnerability in the sudoedit command that allows us to edit any file on the system as root, and this can lead to a complete privilege escalation. So that's what we're going to show you how to do today. Now, just to recap, what are the implications of this? Why would we want to do this in the first place, right? Well, first and foremost, you can gain root privileges on a system. So this means that you can basically have the entire system by the balls, right? You can turn on the webcam, turn on the microphone, access any sort of sensitive files, run your code on their system, install packages that they don't want, install viruses. You can really screw some shit up from here. The caveat is that in order to run this command, in order to run this vulnerability, you have to have non-root system access in the first place. And that's the reason why this is only rated a 7 out of 10 rather than a 10 out of 10 on the severity scale. But this all comes back to, the whole idea of lateral movement, right? If you're a hacker and you're hacking into, a network or something, and you're probably not going to gain access to the administrator system from your first go. You're going to maybe fish your way into a low-level system from some schmuck on the low levels. And from there, you're going to be looking for opportunities to move laterally to escalate your privilege so that you can look into more serious things. And that's where this comes into handy. So yeah, I won't run my mouth any longer. Let me show you exactly how to exploit this vulnerability. Okay, so I'm here in my Ubuntu virtual machine, and the first thing that I want to show you here is my etc sudoers file on this specific installation. So here I can see that I have a rule set for the How To Hacker account. That gives it permission to edit the etc message of the day file with sudoedit permissions. So if you're working on a large system or system with lots of different users, there's going to be rules set in the sudoers file potentially that will allow different users to access different groups of files on the system. And so the etc message of the day file is a pretty benign file on the system. It just shows like a message of the day, I guess. I don't know, I've never really used it. And what we're allowing our How To Hacker account to do is edit this file as a sudo user. But that's the only thing that it's allowed to edit with as sudo. We don't give it permission to access any file in the system, just sudo. And that's what we're going to demonstrate here in just a second. So, and this is, by the way, this is a prerequisite to this attack. We need to have at least one sudo edit rule assigned to our account in order to escalate privileges. So the first thing I'm going to do is sudo into, or switch user into my How To Hacker account. And now I'm in, and I'm going to show you my user ID. So the first thing to see here is I'm a 1001 UID, not a 0 UID, so I don't have root privileges. And just to demonstrate that I don't really have a whole lot of privileges on the system, I'm going to try to install some packages. So for instance, I'm going to do sudo apt install SL. This is one of my favorite little silly libraries. It just shows a little steam train and in ASCII, and it's funny because it's just like the ls command, but if you mistype ls, then it runs the SL, so it's just a little bit of something to brighten up your day a little bit, I guess. Okay, but we're not able to do that, right? Sudo How To Hacker is not allowed to access apt install, and so we don't really have a lot of privileges on this account. But that's all going to change once we run this vulnerability. We're going to get some escalated privileges. The first thing that we're going to do, and actually I'm going to switch into bin bash here, is we're going to set some environment variables to confuse our sudoedit command. So what we're going to do is we're going to set the editor environment variable to equal nano --etc password. So this is the file that contains all of our user privileges. It's a very secured file, not something you'd want just any user being able to change and access. And then we're going to run sudo edit etc message of the day. And this is the file that we do have privileges to access with the sudo edit command. This is a file we would not normally have privileges to access. So we're basically abusing the privileges given to us to access this one to take it a little bit further and access something with allows us to exert a little more control over the system. So we're going to run that. That's going to ask us for our password. And now we are in the etc password file. So this one has a lot of really sensitive stuff in it. But what we want to do is we want to change our user group to group 0, or our user ID to user ID 0, so that's the root user ID. Change our group to 0 and change ourselves to root. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're going to do change this to /root. And just for good measure, I'm going to change this to a big bash. Okay, so yeah, so this is what we've changed the last line of our etc passwords to, and then we're just going to Control S to save it. See, we've saved the sensitive file, and now we're at out. Yeah. So what are we going to do next? Now let's run our ID command. Let's see, how to hacker. Okay, sorry, I had to do something here. I had to switch user one more time in order for the changes to take place. But after I've switched user one more time using the exact same password, I can see now that I have a 0 UID, and I'm in the root group now. So without knowing any other information besides the fact that I have access to edit that one particular benign file, I was able to override the environment variables for the editor to include this extra sensitive file, and then escalate my user privileges based off of that. So that's really great for me now, because now I have the privileges to do whatever I want on the system. I can literally do anything I want now. So for instance, this package that I wasn't able to install just a minute ago, the SL package, I'm going to try to do that now. Sudo apt install SL. Look at that. Installs right away. I didn't have to enter any extra information. I literally have completely escalated privileges. I don't know, hopefully it works. Doesn't look like it wants to connect here. Oh, there we go. Okay. Look at that. Now I can install and run anything that I want on the system that I previously did not have the capacity to do so. So yeah, so that's the basics of the exploit. I hope you enjoyed it. Maybe if you're a security vulnerability expert, or you're working in IT, it's really easy to upgrade your sudo local installation, or you can potentially use the I've heard some people recommending that you switch to the FreeBSD implementation of doas, which has been ported to Linux, and I think the real big advantage there is because it's much simpler. The sudo package now is hundreds of thousands of lines of code, whereas doas is only like 3,000. And for such a package that's integral to system security, doas does 90% of what sudo does, but it's one 1/100th of the code, and so probably a lot less room for vulnerabilities there, or at least they're easier to spot. But yeah, that's the latest sudo hack, and I hope you enjoyed it. Give me a like or a follow if you think that this is something you're interested in, and maybe I'll make some more videos in the future. Alright, bye.